Welcome to Casting Class, the engineer's podcast for all things metal casting. Casting Class is brought to you by Batesville Products, the manufacturing experts who have been casting, machining, and polishing custom aluminum components for over 75 years. Starting in 2020, the market saw a lot of supply chain disruptions, from delivery delays, availability and price of materials, labor shortages. Now in 2024, things have settled down a little bit from the supply chain chaos. So where does the market stand today? I have Rachel Weber and Stephanie Randolph with me today to talk about the current market. We'll start out with the labor market across the US and look at how this impacts manufacturing. Then we'll switch over to the aluminum market, supply, demand, pricing. Next, we'll cover some more supply chain concerns, especially when it comes to onshoring and offshoring. And finally, we'll end on an optimistic note as we discuss new technology in the industry and creeping towards Industry 5.0. So, Rachel, let's kick it off with the labor market. We know things have changed, but how does the labor market look today compared to a couple years ago?
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of the labor market, I know in 2021, at BPI at least, we struggled to get in more labor. A lot of it was due to aging labor industry, especially those kind of retiring and getting out of the workforce, and the upcoming generation not being large enough to replace the older generation. I know specifically at BPI we had a lot of older manufacturing employees who, what we called, had tribal knowledge, who we had to learn to kind of, I think a lot of companies went through and had to collect all that information to be able to help train the next generation. Looking at doing different things such as incentives in terms of competitive wages. Specifically at Batesville Products, we do a pay for skill. So if you learn a new skill, there's an additional pay that comes with it. Other companies I know do mentorship programs and certifications and trainings to help bring employees up to where they need to help manufacture the product that they have at their facility.
Well, anytime you onboard new employees, right, there's a cost factor that's involved, right? So keeping and retaining your tribal knowledge folks, your skilled workers is super important because you eradicate the need to onboard people that are so unaware or knowledgeable to your specific industry. So,
But also being with the next generation not being large enough to replace the current workforce, we have to start looking at automation as a forefront to help offset the labor shortage.
You talked about the aging generation and not enough people to come into the upcoming generation to backfill open positions. So that's why we've spent a lot of time on introducing that next generation to manufacturing careers early, so that they know that we exist and might kind of push towards the trades a little more. So with the kids book, visiting schools, the Foundry camp, field trip tours, career fairs, all of that stuff goes into that.
Yeah.
awesome.
So let's switch over from people to materials, more specifically aluminum. So overall, in the aluminum market, we've seen an increase in demand. Stephanie, can you give us some numbers and maybe tell us a little more about the aluminum demand in North America?
Absolutely, Mary. Recently, the Aluminum Association released a prelim estimate as part of its monthly aluminum situation report, showing demand for the aluminum industry in North America has increased by 4.3 year over year through the first quarter of 2024. And that's great news because it followed an estimated drop in the demand of 3.9% last year after the strong results of 2020.
So overall, steady increase.
Domestic aluminum demand is rebounding so far this year, and that's continued interest from customers and end customers in a more sustainable recyclable material, which aluminum is. We continue to believe that the North American region and the United States in particular will be one of the best places in the world to continue to make and use aluminum in various products and industries.
I think one interesting fact when it comes to that sustainability of aluminum is you might have heard it before, but like aluminum's one of the materials that can be recycled over and over and over again.
Absolutely,
so it's
definitely.
100% recyclable. You're not losing out on it every time you recycle it.
That's correct. It's indefinitely recyclable.
I'd say one thing to bring up when we're looking at the market for materials is that there have been supply chain issues for materials in the past. I know that was a big concern in 2020 and 2021. Thankfully, we have never seen any of that for aluminum, especially since we source our material in North America. We've been able to keep a stock of aluminum ready for casting at all times. So no supply chain disruptions, nothing to worry about there. Do you guys have anything else to add about supply and demand before we talk pricing?
In terms of aluminum, I think the supply and demand has been pretty solid. It's always been, for us, the last couple of years is supply and demand of labor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the physical demand for aluminum has actually gone up from 2023 to 2024, which is great news. We estimated almost 7 million pounds through March of 2024, and then Q1 2023 was only 6.5. So we had a significant gain there. So it's really, really good news, positive.
So let's talk a little bit about aluminum prices. So it's no secret that overall prices are rising for everything. Groceries, clothes, nothing's getting cheaper than it was a few years ago. So it's not a shock that similarly metal prices and other items like that are also gradually increasing. So can you give us a little picture of what we're seeing with metal pricing right now?
Well, Mary, in January 2020, we were at about $1,700 a ton, and then as we sit here in May of 2024, we were up to $2,566 a ton. So that is a significant jump of almost $800 a ton, but we've seen a steady increase in the last 4 years, at the highest levels being in 2022. So we've leveled out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. We saw where aluminum's increase, it's comparable to copper and other commodities as well. So it's not just aluminum going up.
That's true.
So switching gears here, we noticed a few trends in the manufacturing industry. Especially at trade shows, we have a lot of people that are coming up to us. They have projects that they want to produce in the U.S., just a big trend of more onshoring efforts and bringing manufacturing back to the States. So there are a lot of benefits to onshoring, especially when it comes to protecting your supply chain. So Stephanie, what are the driving forces behind this increasing trend, and what causes those supply chain disruptions from sourcing overseas?
Generally, we see that supply chain disruptions are caused by political tensions between the United States and other countries. Definitely severe weather impacts or events. The high cost of shipping is absolutely a factor. Conflicts in foreign countries, unfortunately, such as Russia and Ukraine as of late. The other issue is some but not all parts of components or assemblies that stop the sale or the final assembly of said product.
You had a good example of that last point the other day, if you want to share that.
Absolutely. So if you have anything that has multiple parts for it, and there's an item that is needed to make its function work, and you have all 30 pieces and the one is delayed for all the reasons that I just mentioned, you can't sell or continue assembly on that item, so it stays in inventory as a non-sellable part until you receive that final piece that could come from an overseas supplier.
So if either of you want to share, how does onshoring help address these supply chain disruptions that Stephanie's outlined?
I think a big part would be just the time of shipping and receiving the goods. Time to market, I guess you could call it, is going to be reduced if you're looking at manufacturing onshore versus offshore. And then the cost it takes to actually get the parts here. Really, you're going to have a lot less headaches when it comes to speed to market and then just receiving the product itself.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big things that we are in discussions with our current customers and future customers is definitely quality control. So we, being stateside, we're able to monitor very heavily our quality of products that leave BPI, and then also communicate them if there are issues. And then also the communication that we have with our partners is easier because we're on the States and they're in the States as well. So
Yeah, I think communication is a big part of that, so you're not dealing with the time zone differences. It's easy to get in the car or hop on a plane and go over and visit them face to face, actually look at physical parts together and see how you can troubleshoot that. You don't have any language, cultural barriers. You just get a lot better, quick communication.
Yeah, and on that same note, Mary, our door is always open for any customer or potential customer. So we have a lot of customer visits. Rachel and I host several visits a year from a wide variety of customers, and we enjoy that as well.
Rachel, you kind of brought up the speed to market, and one thing that goes along with that is typically you have to buy in bulk. Mm-hmm. So you're tying up excess capital with inventory. It requires a lot of storage. You have less flexibility, and then you have that risk of port backlogs or even items being lost at sea, which was something we heard of a couple years ago, which seemed kind of crazy, but you would be waiting a year for your product to come in, and then you get notified that, it's at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right, and it eliminates the just-in-time scenario, right? So manufacturing that I've been exposed to is always lean, right, and just-in-time, and that gets eliminated when we're, offshoring parts.
Yeah. So just to summarize, with American manufacturing, you get a reliable supply chain, better quality, better service, and that level of care, easy communication, peace of mind, and then one thing that we didn't mention, but the power of stamping that made in the USA on your product.
Absolutely, Mary.
So onshoring was one trend, but what about some technology trends that we've seen? Can both of you share maybe some new technologies you've seen in the industry lately?
I think specifically if we're talking about a foundry, one thing that we've at least been investing in is auto degassers, which helps bring your pots or furnaces to either the levels that you need in terms of gas, so you can be up and running on production much quicker in terms of based off of the quality that's needed for that product. And it also, with that, helps make automation in bringing a foundry up to 4.0 standards.
One thing with the automatic degassers, the biggest quality issue that you hear when customers are coming to us, they're having issues with their supplier. A lot of these quality issues center around porosity, and a lot of those porosity issues start with your material, your melt.
Yeah.
So those automatic degassers, they're helping alleviate porosity big time by keeping track of your hydrogen levels, your aluminum molecules, the temperature. It's balancing everything to give you that perfect pour.
Yep.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, Mary, that's when we've added at BPI the 24/7 remote monitoring capabilities that we have in our foundry. It's a sensor that monitors the temperatures and the gas level of the metal, so that we maintain that quality, and then it will always alert our management team or key personnel that are able to remedy that situation right away, so there's no material loss there or overproduction.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Additionally to that, cobots are great, so we use those to help work with our operators, and it kind of helps bridge the gap between the labor market that we've been seeing.
So, Rachel, we hear a lot about Industry 4.0 and 5.0. Can you kind of explain the way the Industry 4.0 is evolving into 5.0?
You hear a lot of Europe talking about Industry 5.0, where it's really just kind of continuing the idea of lean manufacturing, just being more environmentally friendly and sustainable, and prioritizing those ethical production practices. But I think really what you're seeing 5.0 is really focusing on advanced technologies that either incorporate AI and help create new raw products and materials that kind of make a more sustainable manufacturing process.
Agreed.
Yeah, 4.0 was all about our robotics and technology, and 5.0 is really expanding upon that and taking it a step further.
Yeah, and I would say when you're looking at foundries, you're going to see your largest foundries that are highly focused on automotive industry. They've been doing 4.0 for years. They've been kind of the leaders on Industry 4.0 for Foundry.
I think 5.0 actually kind of goes back to the grassroots a little bit when, one of the metrics that they define is the importance of human interaction and collaboration. Talking to somebody, understanding that human relationship and their wants and needs, and it just builds that absolute camaraderie that you need when you're working together as a vendor customer relationship or in any other time.
Yeah. I think it's marrying the human aspect with the technology, like especially with cobots. They're collaborative robots. You're working alongside them. They can run without you there, but you need that human that understands the process, and they can program it correctly, and they can troubleshoot it, and
Perfect.
Everything's perfect.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we've given our listeners a little glimpse into the industry and the state of the market today. Thank you again, Stephanie and Rachel, for joining me, and we'll see you all back in next month's episode. Thanks for listening to Casting Class, the engineers podcast for all things metal casting. For more episodes, videos, and guides, check out BatesvilleProducts.com. See you next month.